grandes apresentações, ainda que o Maurício seja mais recém-chegado que a Marianne, e dentro da mesma filosofia que usámos nas anteriores edições do Archaeology at Work, procurámos aqui reunir dois oradores que, não trabalhando necessariamente o mesmo tema, acabassem por poder, com as respectivas apresentações, enfim, também chamar algum público que estivesse, neste caso, vocacionado para as questões de paleolítico, os aspectos de geoarqueologia, que obviamente em momentos mais recuados, enfim, na análise do registro arqueológico, tem um peso cada vez mais decisivo. Eu só agradecerei muito à Marianne e ao Maurício, mais uma vez, estarem aqui.
Professora, não se está a ouvir.
Eu não estou a ouvir nada.
Não se está a ouvir.
Não ouviram nada
Ok,
desde
agora
o princípio?
Sim. Não,
Ou só agora é que sem
Foi
querer?
só agora há 5 minutos.
Nada?
Há 2
Não,
minutos.
só um
agora,
bocadinho,
professora.
só aqui um minutinho, último minuto, acho eu.
Pronto, então eu abrevio aquilo que foi dizendo sem som, que era agradecer à Marianne e ao Maurício estarem aqui mais uma vez. Welcome you both. Thank you for your presentation to our students and to all Lisbon researchers and researchers everywhere that wants to join us, and hoping that very soon we all be able to meet in Lisbon, not digital anymore, and expecting a great conference from you both. Thank you so much, and please, you can start.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm the first, André. Yeah.
So can you see my screen, the slide? Okay, great. So thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. So the talk I'm going to do is about the archaeological investigations that are going on at the prehistoric caves, at a prehistoric cave located in northern Italy that is called Chatachara. I joined the project in 2013 when I was a master's student, and then I worked on this site also during my PhD. In particular, I will refer to the geoarchaeological study at the site that I'm curating in collaboration with Professor Diego Lerco Angelucci, that I saw is here with us. The archaeological investigation at the site has a long history, as we will see shortly. I want to start by saying that this research fits in a wider framework of the most recent attempts to contextualize Paleolithic sites that have already been studied in the past, but that are still lacking in stratigraphic and chronological data. In northern Italy, many new archaeological investigations are trying to fill this information gap, which is particularly important as regards the lower and early middle Paleolithic, both by reconsidering sites that have already been excavated and collecting new data from fieldwork to provide an appropriate scientific data for their study. But why an operation like this is necessary? Well, if we focus on the Alpine arc, it appears clear that current data on human presence predating the last glacial cycle, that is before the marine isotopic stage 4, along the southern margin of the Alps are uneven. The archaeological sites dating back to the Paleolithic are located almost entirely in the geographical range between southeastern France and northern Italy, and in particular along the coastline of the North Adriatic Sea and the eastern side of the Southern Alps. On the other hand, for the central and western side of the Alpine Arch, data are almost absent. This area, which corresponds to the Alpine and pre-Alpine sectors of the Italian regions of Piedmont and Lombardy seems empty within the relatively rich record of its microregional context. In this framework, according to the available data, Piedmont seems definitely to have a marginal role, although archaeological evidence predating the Devonian cycle does exist in the region, as you can see in this map showing the distribution of the known Paleolithic sites in the region. It often comes from sites explored in the 19th or early 20th centuries upon different needs than the actual ones. Most of the material consists of surface and stray finds from open-air sites. It is important to stress then that the laking in data must not be considered as a direct indicator of the absence of human occupation for these areas. Doesn't matter if we are talking of stable or occasional ones, but it must be evaluated under the light of the limitations deriving from the available study in the region. The pin position indicates Monte Venera, a hill that stands isolated at the foot of the Western Alpine relief on the east side of River Sesia at the border between the Alpine chain and the subsidence basin of the Po Plain. It is home to several paleontological and archaeological sites bearing evidence of Paleolithic human occupation, and among them the Chatachara Cave, of course. Monte Venera, it's a mostly carbonate-built hill which reaches 899 meters above the sea level. Geologically, the Monte Venera succession lies almost horizontally on the metamorphic basement of the Serie dei Laghi area due to its geological and geomorphological characteristics. Indeed, the Western Alps are mostly composed of igneous and metamorphic rocks, while the Monte Venera includes sedimentary, often carbonatic strata. And why is this relevant for us? Because it is for this reason that Monte Venera become one of the few massifs of the Western Alpine arc where karstic cave occur, and in several of them, paleological and archaeological material was buried. Of course, due to these peculiarities, Monte Venera sites have a long history within the Alpine archaeology. Altogether, they cover a chronology that goes from the prehistory to late antiquity. Among all, we can cite the Chotarun Cave, the Belvedere Shelter, and of course the Chatachara. The sites have been extensively explored since the 19th century by many scholars and amateurs as well. The recovered materials are now stored and partially displayed in the City Museum of Borgo Sesia, while a part of them has been stolen or lost. So a legit question will be, what is left at Monte Venera after all this year of work? We have to say that despite the extensive archaeological fieldwork undertaken at Monte Venera sites, excavation data are often missing, even for the 20th century campaign, and almost no written documentation is left. Many of the materials do not have a proper indication of provenience. For example, we know that they were recovered on Monte Venera, but not from which stratigraphic unit, nor even the site. Ultimately, information on the stratigraphy, chronology, and formation and function of the sites remain then incomplete or even lacking. A step forward in this direction is represented by the new investigations at Ciota Cave that have been resumed in 2009 and led by the University of Ferrara. To date, the site represents the most important Paleolithic evidence in Piedmont. Nonetheless, the only one systematically excavated with multidisciplinary approach. Let's now introduce the site. Chatachara means bright cavern in the local dialect because of the natural light that illuminates a part of it. It is a complex active karstic cave modeled in Triassic Jawstone. It opens on the west side of Monte Venera at an altitude of 675 meters above the sea level and develops for 200 meters. The cave can be accessed both from a big triangular entrance facing southwest that correspond to the area currently investigated by the archaeological fieldwork, and from a second entrance facing west and named the window, that has been artificially enlarged by the removal of boulders fallen from the cave ceiling. The cave's main passage runs northeast-southwest and is linked to the upper entrance by a short passage. A large hole has formed at the intersection of these two passages. The cave develops over more than 80 meters on its principal axis, with a positive difference in height of 15 meters from the main entrance to the bottom. The first systematic investigations at the site started in the 60s, and archaeological fieldworks were created mainly by Conti and Fedele and continued during the 70s, but with several interruptions. In 1989, 2 isolated teeth and 1 fragment of temporal bone were found in their workers' sediments outside the cave. They were attributed to Homo neanderthalensis because of the site chronology and not on the ground of osteological studies. The human remains have not yet been reanalyzed, and information on their specific morphology and on the reliability of the identification is not available. In the 90s, 2 brief excavation campaigns took place after the finding of other 2 teeth within the sediments transported outside the cave by water, and again attributed to Homo neanderthalensis. The investigated area was located in the atrial part of the cave, where the current fieldwork is ongoing. Very briefly, an example of why excavating on Montefiore is still worth it could be the discovery of an inhumation in 2016 located just in front of the principal entrance of the Chatachara. This has been dated to the late antiquity and is of a woman who for sure had a relevant position in her contemporary society. Going back to the Pleistocene deposit we're talking about, the new systematic excavation unearthed a 2-meter thick sequence that is currently studied by means of state-of-the-art archaeological methods and an interdisciplinary approach. Differently from the previous intervention, this time during each remain with a length equal or bigger than 2 centimeters is positioned, while sieving allows to recover the smallest lithic and fauna remains. Among the multidisciplinary investigation, geoarchaeology finds its place as well. What we have done at Chatachara was to apply a classical geoarchaeological approach, focusing on site formation processes with the aim to understand and reconstruct the deposit that is preserved at the site in its whole, and then to identify the main sedimentary dynamics that are responsible for sediment deposition, alteration, and other syn and post-depositional processes that have affected the human remains as well. When the fieldwork began, the infilling of the southwestern entrance of Chatachara Cave was the remnant of a thicker stratification that was partly removed during earlier campaigns and clandestine excavations. According to the available information, the upper part of the deposit was composed of reworked sediment and contained mixed archaeological assemblage. We must remind that no reliable documentation or data on previous works was available. We had thus to set our intervention from scratch through the participation to fieldwork and excavation, accurate field description, and subsequent sampling for routine sedimentological analysis, basic geochemical characterization, and micromorphological observation. At the site, 5 excavation units were identified, 4 of them preserving archaeological and paleontological remains and corresponding to different modalities of occupation of the site, Unit 13, 14, 15, and 103. Field observation led us to subdivide Unit 14 in 2 subunits due to the presence of different fascias. Unit 15 is a a deposit of breccia, but is still archaeologically relevant, while Unix 16 has its same characteristics, but is archaeologically sterile and rests on the cave bedrock. So now we have to go back to archaeology for one moment. The lithic assemblage recovered from the southwestern entrance counts more than 7,000 lithic artifacts. It represents the most important Middle Paleolithic assemblage of the region, and the only one issued from systematic and modern excavation. The study of the lithic assemblage clearly shows that the general technological behavior does not change all along the sequence and can be defined as expedient. In all the archaeological layers, there is a clear predominance of local rocks, particularly vein quartz, and a marginal presence of allochthonous raw materials. Opportunistic reduction strategies are the most represented in all the phases of human occupation of the site, even if Levallois and discoid methods are well attested. The quality of the raw materials strongly affected the development of the reduction sequences. Retouched tools are relatively scarce at Chatachara, and they must consist of side scrapers and denticulated tools. Use-wear analysis showed that the activities carried out at the site were mostly related to food processing and woodworking. The raw material used to produce lithic artifacts are mainly pegmatitic quartz and subordinately chert, often spongolite from the local Calcari spongolitici formation. The data obtained indicate an articulated economic behavior that includes a great knowledge of the natural resource available, both in the immediate surroundings of the site and on a sub-regional. The identification of raw materials supply areas located nearby actual Lombardy suggests that these territories have been frequented more intensely than it was thought during the Middle Paleolithic. The large mammals assemblage is dominated by carnivore remains in all the units. Cave bear, Ursus peleus, accounts for more than 80% of the faunal assemblage. Cut marks related to skinning activities and flesh extraction are attested on some Ursus peleus remains, although most of them result from the natural deaths of animals that hibernated the cave. The importance of herbivores is relevant only in level 14, while the small assemblage show great diversity and is dominated by Cletriomys glerus and Pliomys coronensis. The paleoenvironmental reconstruction achieved through the paleontological analysis of macro and micro mammals remains shows that a woodland environment was predominant during the occupation of the site, but a slight climatic change is visible between level 13 and level 14, from warmer to cold and humid environments. Level 14 is characterized by different markers of cold climate, like Cricetus cricetus and Microtus grevalis, and thus indicating an open woodland environment with exposed rocks. Furthermore, the presence of Pliomys coronensis, a species that has disappeared from the Italian peninsula since the end of marine isotopic stage 5, attests that the cave was occupied during a relative warm phase and led to assign the cave deposit to marine isotopic stage 5 itself. More recently, preliminary combined ESR uranium series dating of fossil enamel dates back the deposit from the second half to the middle Pleistocene, between marine isotopic stage 8 to 7, while the biochronological studies find the presence of Canis lupus, Ursus peleus, Vulpes vulpes, and Rupicapra indicators to an older chronology around marine isotopic stage 7DC to 7BA. These issues are still debated, and new samples have been taken from other stratigraphic units, while the study of the faunal assemblage continues. Now that we know better the archaeology at Chatachara, we can go back to the geoarchaeological investigation. Our work was carried from the field to the laboratory. Sedimentological analyses were performed on 15 bulk samples that have been collected from 2009 to 2016 from units 13, 14, 15, and 16 from the southwestern entrance deposit. They were analyzed to obtain grain size distribution and textural classification of the fine earth. All the units are poorly sorted, sandy silt to silty loam, reddish brown to brown, massive and chaotically arranged, with common to many stones. Mostly fragments of local dolstone with subordinate fragments of sandstone and occasional exotic components. We will see this in a few moments. Organic matter content was determined by means of loss of ignition analysis. The quantity of organic matter ranges from approximately 3 to 6% across the succession. No relevant variations are observed within the deposit. Calcimetry shows a limited content of calcium carbonate in all the units that mostly results from the dissolution of the dolstone. Units 13, 14, and 15 and their internal features have been systematically sampled for micromorphological observations as well. On the contrary, for unit 16 and 103, it was not possible to take this kind of samples because of the characteristics of the sediments itself. 8 samples have been studied, while others are currently under observation or in preparation. Unit 13 and 14 reveal similar characteristics as far as their composition, microstructure, and pedofeatures are concerned, while some differences are observed for Unit 15. Now, I won't go in detail regarding all the aspects and results from the micromorphological analysis here, but I'm going to try to discuss directly the sedimentary sources and dynamics at the site, considering both field and microstratigraphic observation, and by comparing sedimentological, micromorphological analysis with the other archaeological data and the ones available regarding the geology and the geomorphology of Montevenera. This will lead us to formulate some hypotheses about the formation processes that acted at Chatachara. Let's start from a conclusion then and go backward to understand how we got there. The stratigraphic layout and the sedimentary characteristics of the site indicate that the deposit filling the southwestern entrance came from the cave, and it was laid down by dynamics related to concentrated flows from the inner karstic system, alternated to the occurrence of occasional depositional events by surface water currents through tractive mechanism, as well as short phases of surface stabilization. Let's start with the provenience of the coarse fraction. The accumulation of coarse dolstone fragments was derived from the degradation of the bedrock, of the ceiling, and of the walls of the cave. The fragments may be undergone to short distance reworking from the inner cave passage. This observation is also confirmed by the presence of isolated crystals of calcite, dolomite, and dolomite deriving from mechanical breakage of pre-existing rock fragments within the finer sediment. In the picture, you can see how the very same passage looks like these days, and this should give you an idea. Consider that even to date, after heavy rainfalls, Vadose water may flow from both the main northeast-southwest passage and the second system, springing from the lower entrance where the excavation is located. This is important to notice because the paleoenvironmental meaning of the coarse angular fraction has been much debated in the literature. Within the Chatachara deposit, this fraction does not show any feature that may indicate specific processes of rock degradation, besides stress release or standard bedrock disintegration. No frost lab were detected within the deposit, and therefore it is not possible to evaluate the action of freeze thaw on bedrock, even if their absence can be related to the characteristic of the host bedrock, which is massively stratified. Besides the local drawstone, the most common components that have been deposited at the site are the ones deriving from the Mesozoic sedimentary formations, which feed the upper part of the Chatachara karstic network. There are short fragments from the Calcari Spongolitici formation and sandstone fragments belonging to the San Quirico sandstone formation. The same formation is the primary source for the quartz, feldspars, and micas grains as well, and occasion of all the other minerals that are the basic components of the sandstone itself. Of course, it cannot be excluded that a portion of the fine fraction with this composition may primarily derive from aeolian inputs. So the loss accumulation was active in the Po plain and along the southern margin of the Alps throughout the Pleistocene, as well as rounded grains of quartz and feldspar were detected under the microscope. At the same time, there could have been inputs from former surface sediments or pre-existing soil covers outcropping the Monte Venera slopes that could have been washed into the cave system and transported by karstic water. For example, the presence of pedorelicts or pebbles, respectively fragments of older soils and reworked clay coatings embedded in the ground masses, may be an input from former soils. At the moment, there are sufficient data on soils and surface sediments on the slopes of Monte Venera, therefore further analyses are needed. We have also to cite the exotic pebbles, ciotoletti esotici in Italian. During the 20th century excavation campaigns, the exotic pebbles often attract the attention of the archaeologists and the other researchers. Their origin has been much debated, and to this they derive their name. These rounded pebbles and granules of mafic or ultramafic igneous and metamorphic rocks, often quartzite, gneiss, or amphibolite, systematically found in the caving fillings of Monte Venera. Actually, the hill Monte Venera was never reached by alpine glaciers during the Pleistocene, but an explication of their origin is given by Fantoni and Fantoni. They say that they are remnants from the erosion of the Miocene sedimentary cover that it's found all along the southern Alps, but that has largely been washed away as a result of tectonic uplifting and subsequent erosion during the Pliocene and the Pleistocene. Components related to biological activity or human inputs have been detected as well. Constituents such as the occasional small charcoal fragments of vegetal origin, lithic artifacts, and burnt bone fragments are attributed to anthropogenic inputs. Other components such as subangular to subrounded fragments of phosphatic composition and several bone fragments to the biogenic one. Let's move to the post-depositional processes that have affected the site. These include frost action, hydromorphism, secondary accumulation of soluble substances, as well as weathering dynamics and diagenesis that have selectively affected both natural and archaeological components. Secondary accumulation of iron, manganese, oxides points to the redoxymorphic conditions within the sediment due to a temporary occurrence of a perched water table related to permeability barrier at the boundary between unit 16, the lower one, and the bedrock. Textural pedofeatures are common as well, and include clay and silty clay coatings on mineral grains and rock fragments or along void walls, along with inherited and disrupted clay coatings. The widespread presence of these pedofeatures across all the facies suggests that several phases of clay migration took place and affected the whole thickness of the deposit. An interesting observation regards the bone fragments. They show indeed different degrees of physical weathering as well as presence of iron manganese oxide coatings and occasionally evidence of thermal impact. Quantitative analysis of the relationships between the size of the bones, their degree of weathering, and the development of iron manganese oxide coating has shown an existence of a positive correlation. The coatings on the bone fragments larger than 500 micrometers are more developed than on the bones that are smaller than 500 micrometers. And this is true for all the units. At the same time, the more weathered the bone, the more developed becomes the coating. This is true in particular for unit 15. These data show that the bones collected from unit 14 and 15 do not belong to a homogeneous assemblage. This means that some of them were discarded at the cave entrance and were found in almost their original position, while some others have undergone short distance displacement from the cave to its entrance, as also attested by the distinct taphonomy on the burr remains. Phosphate secondary accumulation in the form of nodules and coatings, hypocoatings on the carbonatic components is observed as well. The intensity of the diagenic phosphate accumulation increases from top to bottom of the deposit due to an outcropping of bedrock below unit 15 and 16 and consequent restricted water infiltration in the lower part of the deposit. The origin of the phosphate has not been studied in detail yet, even if it can be supposed that it comes from both guano accumulation due to birds and bats nesting in the cave, as well as from addition of excrement and urine to the sediment, mainly from cave bear and other animals. At the base of unit 14 and within unit 15, evidence of frost action related to freeze thaw could be recognized. The main characteristics attesting to frost action are usually at a microscopic level, the platy, locally banded microstructure, the widespread occurrence of silt cappings on rock fragments, and the presence of common randomly distributed, disrupted, and reworked clay coatings, as the ones depicted in the pictures. The development of microstructure and frost-related features detected in the lower part of the subsection can be considered as markers for exposure to external subaerial conditions, the latter indicating that the deposit was affected by temperature fluctuations, usually not observed inside caves due to strong attenuation of temperature excursion. In conclusion, we can say that the infilling of the southwest entrance was mainly built up by debris flow and runoff events coming from the cave's internal passage. On average, the deposit filling the cave shows the typical features of clastic cave and rock shelter sediments in karst. The stratification is crude, the coarser fraction is embedded within the interstitial material, and the textural sorting is poor. This evidence, associated with the examination of the differential weathering of the remains and distribution of the pedofeatures, in particular the iron manganese oxide coatings and stains, demonstrates that only a part of the assemblage collected at the cave entrance is in situ. Another part was transported from the passage that feeds the entrance. The stratigraphy of the deposit points to an accumulation formed by consecutive events, although the lack of major discontinuities within the succession suggests that it was probably laid down at a regular piece. At the same time, the vertical distribution of microstructures and characteristics related to soil reworking or inwash, such as fragmented metafeatures, reveal a gradual change in the post-depositional processes, which may result from climatic fluctuations through time. The archaeological micromorphology results show that the lower part of the examined succession suffered significant frost action soon after its accumulation, confirming a relatively cold environment as suggested by the paleoecological indicators. Comparing all these observations with the archaeological data, it can be said that the Chatachara deposit covers a time span corresponding to the transition between the middle and the upper Pleistocene. The investigation has far to be completed, so just one last slide to say that today the field work continues next to the area we have been discussing on, just behind the wall. Starting from 2018, a new excavation area was opened in the attempt to gather more information and correlate the stratification with the external portion of the atrial zone. Stratigraphically, we still have many issues to deal with, again, because of the missing data from the previous excavation. Anyway, recent developments seems promising, since in correspondence to a unit that has the same characteristics observed for unit 13 outside, 4 new feet along with a skull fragment have been found. Preliminary analysis seem to have attributed them to Homo neanderthalensis. Yep. It's already finished. Oh. No.
Thank you so much, Maurizio. Now I think that we can open the time for questions. That's right, Andre. So please feel free to ask our researchers to put some questions or comments. And I would like first to thank you both for your amazing presentations on this so much detailed analysis of the sites. It's indeed amazing how you can combining so many different techniques, looking at these sites as a crime scene, and you are recovering every clue, every sign of what was happening thousands of years ago. That's truly amazing. So congratulations, you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I was clapping my hand. That's not a question. I was doing it. No, it's okay. Thank you. Oh, I was very happy because I really don't know those sites, neither Cueva Antón or Chatachara. Well, something new. No, but anyway, very good. Congratulations. Well, I know, I already knew Chatachara, but I'm very happy about the Marianne data. We should continue to study these fire features, which really look very, very nice. They're very well preserved. We have nice preservation of ash, of redden belt, and now I see that that your data, Marianne, fits very well with geoarchaeological evidence, because in the field, more or less, with Joao and Daniela, we gave more or less the same interpretation. I was very happy about your information of the entrance of water in the cave, which really looks like something low energy. It's not, I mean, it's attractive current, it's water flow, but it's not a high speed. So it's as someone usually says, this is archaeology is a science. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
As well, I see some people probably in Val da Serra. Filipa, you're muted.
Acertaste. Estamos no Val da
Acertei. Pedro, Filipa, quem é o terceiro?
Não é o Henrique, é o Alexandre.
Ah, tá bem, olha. Pedro, a gruta em que falou o Maurizio é em Dolomia. Viste as fotos? Pois é. É uma... Vou dizer em inglês, assim também percebe o Maurizio. You know, we have a lot of conversation about the cave formation in Dolostone, and Chatachara is a good example, but there are very well developed karstic networks in dolomite, in dolostone, and the Chatachara is one of those cases. You know, we always read in the handbooks was written, there are no caves in Dolostone. It's not true. It's just a matter of time of formation. You need a lot of time. There's probably something which was exposed something like several million years ago. And we have an excellent karstic network, which today is in Vadose system, but it was formed in a phreatic condition. So it's a sort of strange situation, but it's a cave in dolomite, which is funny also for the mineralogy of the sediment.
One question, Maurizio? Yeah? If I understood correctly...
Ouvimos mal, João. Ouvimos
Jó,
mal.
tens que utilizar o microfone, não se ouve.
E agora?
Microfone.
E agora?
Ela é mais perto do microfone do computador.
E agora?
Assim
Melhor.
como está. Mas pronto.
Olha, yes, the question is, if I understood correctly, because of the elevation of the mountain, it was above the level of the ice during the glaciation?
The question is if Monte Venera wasn't covered by ice.
Yes.
Yes, it wasn't. Yes, this is one of the peculiarity of the site, and this is the reason why it was accessible to the hunter-gatherers during the Middle Paleolithic.
Yes, but there is no occupation after marine isotope stage 5. People could have been there despite the ice, but they were not, or is it because the mountain was an island in the middle of the sea of ice, or because the post-MIS5 the sediments were eroded?
Sorry, I really, there is a really bad audio.
Tem o micro ligado, João.
Tenho.
É que nós ouvimos tão mal.
Opa, não percebo. Espera aí.
Não. Pelo visto, o Maurício também está-se a queixar.
Mete lá o headphone.
Espera aí, não tenho... espera aí. Se calhar tenho que mudar de...
Micro, não é? Se calhar está para o computador e não está nesse...
Agora ouvi bem.
Não, igual.
E agora?
A mim igual.
Mesma coisa?
A mesma coisa sempre.
Mas sabe, quando afastas o micro, eu acho que se ouve ligeiramente melhor.
E agora?
Eu acho que está melhor.
É? Espera lá, vou aumentar aqui o volume. E agora?
Tens que falar.
Epá, pois, eu estou a falar nisso.
Acho que está melhor.
É?
É.
E assim?
Sim.
Pronto. So the question is, the last occupations preserved in the sequence are of MIS5H, correct?
No.
Maurizio, ti ha chiesto se è l'ultima occupazione dello stadio 5 o se ce ne sono di più recenti.
But during the Paleolithic, I mean, no. Okay. So we don't have direct evidence of occupation. I mean, archaeologists are saying this on the basis of the lithic study and then attribute the site, the occupation to the Middle Paleolithic, but the marine isotopic stage 5 is indicated only by the micro mammals study. So we still haven't found a direct correlation between this and the the other studies.
João, the upper part of the deposit was destroyed. So
okay, in that sense, okay.
So there's probably something earlier, but we really don't know. When Marta Azzarello, this is a big hill with a lot of caves, and when Marta Azzarello 15 years ago went to the museum to check for the lithics, she found that the lithics were just labeled Monte Fenera, which is just like to say Ceja d'Aire. There were no indication of site, of the unit, of a position, nothing. So there is Upper Paleolithic, but no idea of which cave is from and what's the situation. So that's why Maurizio had to start from scratch, from zero, because the Russian excavation were really very bad in the past, and this is such an important site. The last who dug there was Francesco Fedele. Have you ever heard about this man?
I know the name from Argon, the Phlegraean Fuels stuff, publications.
But he wasn't very keen about recording, registering, documentation, etc. So Maurizio had some problem in checking field evidence and the cross-section drawings. We were completely distinct. So it's but the answer is yes. There was something much younger. There's also Neolithic and Bronze Age and something Roman, Maurizio, also late antique.
Roman, late antiquity, there is everything.
But okay, missing, like in the good old times.
So the issue is not that the mountain was an island surrounded by seas during, for instance, stage 4. It's just that the information is lost or missing due to erosion or poor recording. Did I understand correctly?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
rispondo io, Maurizio?
Sì. Faccio proprio fatica a capire.
Sì, infatti, ma perché io conosco la sua voce, allora lo capisco. Problem is that all around the Alps, where we have glacier advance, there's nothing preserved before 25,000 years ago. So the Monte Venera, which is in a position which is in the pre-alpine position, is a sort of exception, because here, where I am now in Trento, there's nothing older than 15,000 years ago, because the glaciers come and destroys everything. So that's what Maurizio wanted to say during his presentation, that we are lucky that the Monte Venera was not reached by the Pleistocene glacier, and therefore older deposit was preserved. Giusto, Maurizio? Ciao. Multilingual conversation, sorry. Está claro?
Vou responder por mensagem no chat.
É melhor, porque não soube nada.
João, e se experimentares desligar esse teu microfone e manter só o do computador? Talvez resulte.
Não sei. E agora?
É o mesmo.
Pronto, deixa estar.
Eu acho que é
Não corre bem, definitivamente. Não corre bem. Há aí um eco.
A minha câmara, a minha webcam não está a funcionar. Está a funcionar com a imagem, mas há aqui um problema com a...
Bem, enquanto ele escreve, então eu agradeço as comunicações à Marianne pelo seu esforço em português, que foi maravilhoso.
Foi muito trabalho.
Muito trabalho. E com ajuda conseguimos, não é? Conseguimos sempre.
Cristina, e pode-se dizer aqui, se há algum espaço para melhorar na pronúncia, a escrita está sintaticamente irrepreensível, não pode ir mais longe, não pode mudar. É só agora ajustar a pronúncia, mais nada.
Mas a pronúncia dá um certo charme.
Claro. É o encanto dos franceses a falar em português.
João, diz-se Nunatak, no island.
Ai!
Tá bem.
Temos tantas saudades tuas, Diego. Alguém que corrija o Joãozinho.
Maurizio, puoi rispondergli.
No, it was not an island. I mean...
No, lui ha chiesto se era un Nunatak. Ha scritto island sbagliato. Era un Nunatak. Rispondigli in inglese.
Island.
Okay. So now it was...
André, eu vou só aproveitar para me despedir, desculpem, I just to say goodbye, I need to go to pick someone, and thank you so much, Marianne, Maurizio, hope to meet you very soon, and please stay and keep on with the debate. André is the host now, and thank you so much, André, and to you all, hope to meet you soon. Okay, stay well.
Thank you.
Obrigado, Marianne.
Bye.
See you also, Diego.
Foi um vírus que o João enviou.
Can you hear me?
Now, yes.
Yes.
Okay. No, it was not non attack. I mean, it was not reached by the. It's not what it was not entirely covered by the ice. So it functioned like a refugee, an area that was. I mean that. I mean, no, the question is not.
No, João, o glaciar não chegava lá, ponto. Estava um bocadinho mais a norte.
Ok.
Estou aqui à procura do mapa, mas não para fazer o share, mas não encontro.
Where is that? I don't have it now here. Where is?
Bom, então, isto quer dizer que se o Maurício não consegue falar, tu tens um problema de update, acho que é hora que o André pode ir a casa a jantar aqui. Também não. Também.
No, mas Maurizio will come to Lisbon very soon, so probably you can speak personally about this this question. Probably with better results. Yes, with masks.
No.
Vacinados.
No, it's safe. You both are safe. You're already immune.
Except the VM.
Bem, isto já não está no YouTube, pois não, André?
No further questions for our speakers. I would like to thank Marianne and Maurizio. Marianne for her effort to speak in Portuguese very well. It was a good speech, and Maurizio for his contribution also. And I want the audience to don't forget next Wednesday, April the 14th, I believe. There will be more 2 talks with André Martins and André Tomás Santos about the artifact from Vila Nova de São Pedro by André Martins, and André Tomás Santos will talk about the rock art of Vila Nova de Foscoa. So if there are no further questions, no further comments, I would like to thank you all.
And we have an open class also on Thursday about Paleolithic.
Thank you, Christina. That's it. We have an open class tomorrow. We have an open class about archaeoscience with Rita Peruteu. It's all on the social network and also on the mailing list of UNIARQ. And we'll have the 15th a class, Paleolithic class with Laurent Claric, I believe. Yes? Okay.
Yes, Laurent Claric.
And in the same day, but later, we have a class with Augusto Salgado about undersea archaeology. So stay tuned. They will be through a Zoom meeting. They will Claric's lesson and class will be Zoom and will be streamed on YouTube. So stay tuned and stay with us, and we'll see you further in time. Okay. So goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Ciao.